Hello everyone. So, as we all know, our topic is gender neutrality. So I'll just start off. So I'm going to start off by giving you all some labels for you to use on me. As we all know, we're a fan of labels. Even though we're hypocrites that keep saying that we don't need labels, we're all equal, labels are very important to us. Caste, religion, gender, the type of hair, the type of clothes we wear, the type of brands we use. So I'll just start off. So I'm not a huge fan of religion, and I'm still doubtful about the existence of God. So you can call me agnostic. That's one label. I want the world to adopt socialism, so you can call me a socialist. I don't really fit into the heteronormative path of sexuality, so you can call me queer. Now, when we speak about gender, if I say that I don't really believe in the concept of gender, I don't believe in gender at all, I don't believe in man or woman, what label would you give me? Of course, we all know that you can call me gender neutral, but that's not my gender, it's my idea of gender. The answer lies in what we're talking about today, which is one, gender, which is an institution, it's a social topic, and neutrality. And what's neutrality? Is it not seeing anything clearly, or is it seeing things clearly and finding neutrality in it? It's as boring as the word could sound. It's not just black and white. It's everything in between. It's like a rainbow. It's a spectrum. We know writers keep saying that gender is a spectrum and everyone's part of that spectrum. But how do we understand that spectrum? How complicated is that spectrum? So I just want to give you a small storyline of what I went through and why I ended up speaking about gender neutrality. So it started off when I was a small brown Muslim boy in primary school. I went to a really strict Catholic Jesuit school. And they always wanted you to be perfect. They wanted you to wear the perfect trousers, the perfect smile, the perfect accent. I remember teachers used to put their hand against my mouth and, don't force your air out because you want your English to be perfect. It was so important to fit into, this idea of being a Jesuit student. I remember teachers used to send me down to principal schools because you were not Jesuit enough. So what was Jesuit enough? I did not understand that. School went on, it was a boys' school, as we all know. Jesuits are not a huge fan of educating girls, so it was a boys' school. I had all sorts of boys who were fans of football, fans of cricket, fans of chess, and I never knew what of a fan I was. So from there, with all this confusing ideals of gender, I did not have girls around me. I did not know what girls were. All the girls I knew were my teachers that wanted to beat me up, my mother, who really did not fit into this concept of a typical housewife mom. And it was the girls I knew in tuition classes, but they never spoke to me. Because I did not look like a perfect boy that was very comfortable speaking to everyone. I used to say many stupid things, I still do. I'm not very easy with my tongue. But anyway, from that school, I went to a different school. It was a Muslim school run by Muslims. So you can imagine, everyone was very strict. As Jesuit it was, the school was as Muslim it could be. So here, the story was different. There were girls in the school. I was like, whoa, what do I do with all these girls around me? So they're all wearing hijabs, and they're all very nice girls, but they're all big, they're macho big. You feel like they're going to beat you up. And the boys, they were all very tall. I couldn't stand up to them and speak because I was this very skinny kid, just like I was very skinny, I was brown, I was not, I did not eat a lot. I was kind of like an anorexic person. There, I understood that gender has something to do with religion. And this religious notion of gender which is given to you. You have to be a perfect servant to God. But if gender is only one way of religion, then why do you think that women and men see God differently? Why should women always serve God? And why should men stand up to the gods? Why should men, fight like gods? It's like God. But when you say the word goddess, it's different. Goddess should always be a person who's scary. You all see these goddesses in Indian mythology which are scary, and sometimes they're scary, sometimes it's too soft. You don't see a normal goddess. You don't see a goddess that wears normal clothes. So this concept went on and on. I was really doubtful about what I wanted to think about gender and what my gender was. Of course I was a man. I have male genitalia. I was born a man, like most of you here. And I was very clearly understanding about my gender of not being a woman. I was not a woman. I knew that. I couldn't fathom the fact that I was not a woman. So then I thought, okay, So I'm in this Muslim school, I'm going on with gender, I'm having this confusing thought about gender. And then, woof, my mother tells me, you don't study in this school, school is very toxic. Because my mother was a communist. So she is very, very hateful of religious institutions running schools. But she was very stupid of putting me in a school run by Hindu fundamentalists. It was a school run by allies of the RSS. So then, it was like, gender was something of what we see today in our world, in our college today. We had many types of girls, but as we all know, girls are supposed to gossip, girls are supposed to be in the corner of the class, girls are supposed to, eat their lunches outside the class, girls are not supposed to play. Even if they play, they're supposed to play tennis or chess, nothing other than that. If you're playing football, then you have to, be a certain way of football. So I did not fit into any of these gender norms. That's when I actually started asking this question. How do I define gender? Is gender a social concept? Is gender a concept that is given to you by society? Is it like a job title that's given to you? Or is it something that has to do with this extreme toxic fetish of society? Does society really want you to fit into certain boxes so that society can play with you? Society find pleasure. So what is society? Is society a group of people that rules? A certain area? Is it a notion? Of course it's a notion. So I understood that gender is all of this, but has nothing to do with who we are. There's a person of who we are, okay? So that person could be man, it could be woman, it could be gender fluid, gender non-binary, gender non-confirming, gender binary. We have 57 different genders like Google tells you. So I thought, what about the 58th gender? What about the 59th gender? What about the 60th and 61st gender? Don't those gender identities have a fit in society? So, thousands of years ago we had one gender, that was man. Because all the prophets are men. We don't see a female prophet anywhere. All the prophets were men, all the heroes were men. We have a few female idols, but other than that, it's predominantly patriarchal. And the women were the other sex. They did not have a place in the the mainstream discussion, the discourse. And then we came on to identify women, and we started saying man and woman. And what about the third gender? We said, okay, then neither man nor woman. Some people said they're more than man and more than woman. But for the past few decades, we started identifying transgenders. So what are transgenders? Transgenders are people that are born to a definite gender, and they identify as a different gender, of the opposite normally. Then we saw intersex people that are born with two genitalia. They don't belong to any gender. They can't be called transgender. So this notion of identifying gender. So Google suddenly says that we need gender neutral language, and they put out 57 gender options for you to choose from. So you log on to Facebook, you sign up to Facebook and you want to choose your gender. You have 57 options. You're still confusing what's your gender. Am I a man? Am I a woman? Now we know people that use all those genders to be cool with. So like, I'm gender non-binary. You know what's that? No. They don't even know what gender non-binary is. My notion of gender is that gender is not just 57 of them. Gender is a billion of them. 7 billion people in this country, in this world, has 7 billion different gender identities. And of course, you're a man, you're a woman, you're trans, all that. But a gender identity is not biology. We often confuse biology with society. So biology tells you that you should be, resting during, let's say, when you're sick. And science tells you that, society tells you that you can't rest anytime, you should go work and earn money to build up your family. So that's this concept of family that's associated with men. Then you have the concept of cooking and doing softer things, like what women do. You can't raise your voice, you should be really soft and really fragile, you should be beautiful. A man can't be beautiful. I identify myself as a beautiful person, but often people say, no, it's not beautiful, it's a different word. Is it handsome? No, handsome is too formal. So it's confusing. So when I started talking about gender neutrality, I did not really want to define gender neutrality, because gender neutrality is not something that you can define. It is a breaking of the notion of gender. Vandana Shiva, a famous environmentalist, said that patriarchal society should not be defeated by women. It's not something that women should do what men should do. Women should come out and destroy the notion of patriarchy. So you don't really need gender to identify yourself as a powerful person in society. When you destroy the notions of gender, a lot of things happen. I'm pretty sure that at least some of you have some point of view, I've gone home and thought, I want to do this, but what if I do this and people think, I don't do this. Normally gender, the people that belong to my gender don't want to do this. When you start doing that thing, and when you start identifying yourself as a person who wants to do that instead of a man or a woman, you'll see this small notion which we keep saying all the time, which is freedom. Gender neutrality is not freedom, but identifying yourself as an individual of society, of course, because we can't exist without society. Society is the reason we have an existence. But when you take away that notion of identity, of course, we have different races, we have different nationalities, languages, but the basic thing is gender. Ezra Miller, the man who played Flash, kept saying that if you don't have patriarchy in the world, we won't have war. So why is war always associated with men? Why don't women go to war? Of one thing, women are clever, they want to go on with the world. The other thing is, war is something that wants to destroy, and men are forced to destroy. Men are always supposed to fit in to the ideal of destruction. They want to rule, they want to destroy things, and women are supposed to protect what they want to destroy. Just trying to break this. And I'm not saying, for going ulta, I'm saying women should destroy and men should be soft, but I'm saying just destroy the idea of destruction and think about things straight. That's when you identify the actual meaning of gender. And I just want to end it by saying that, if all of you do two things. One is that you could go home and think about a situation when you belong to a different gender. What would you do? Would you have privileges, which most women could have? If you're a man, you wouldn't be sitting here. You'd be going out and doing what you want. You wouldn't be listening to me. And if all the men were women, of course you'd be afraid because you'd be losing the privileges of being a man, which I lost. When I started saying I'm gender neutral out and proud, people were like, okay, then you're not supposed to do this. How is that? How is eating an ice cream feminine all the time? Why is sitting at home and reading feminine? Why isn't, recently a bunch of guys told me to lift a bench. I was like, no, I don't want to lift a bench because I'm not that well. So people were like, oh, you should work hard, you should fit up. But if I were a woman, would they be asking me to lift a bench? Or would they be telling, okay, in which way should I go? Like a woman should always plan, she should be very responsible. So that's gender. Gender is only a social concept. It's a concept that is given you by society. And society includes a lot of things. It includes community, it includes traditions, custom, religion, a lot of these things, of course. But take away that social concept, destroy that social concept, and think about individuals as individuals. That's when you realize that gender does not really exist. So we need to build up to a world where women and men are equal, or we need to build up to a world where everyone is equal. We don't need the labels of man and woman. But before I end this, I just want to say that when you talk about women and men, of course talk about gender. You have to talk about gender. It's like caste, Even if you say that gender equality exists, gender differences still exist. Equality comes within those differences. So you speak about gender in a way that you can destroy it, not promote it. So, thank you.